welcome to Rancher Live, folks.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. All right. All right. So today is July 29th, and that's a Rancher Live. And I have our guests, Kaslin Fields from Google, and I have Jorge Castro from CNCF. Hello and welcome. All right. Before we start, just announcement from my side. I live in an area where we have a little bit of wildfires right now. So if by chance I lose electricity, I'm sorry, I'll try to be right back, whatever that means, having a fire around you. But welcome. And so today's topic is about DevRel, dev advocacy, evangelism, whatever you call it. There are fancy names for that all around. So I invited these two people to share their thoughts about that and to try to demystify the whole role and what we do. And is there any value back from our roles? That's for you, Jorge. So before we go, I want to ask Kathleen to introduce herself and say some words about her.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kaslin Fields, and I'm a developer advocate at Google, where I actually, I guess I should probably change my title more. I actually lead the Cloud Runtimes developer advocacy group. I'm a manager.
Nice.
And Cloud Runtimes for us means GKE and Cloud Run. Are the two products that we primarily focus on. And I also am a co-chair in open source Kubernetes of the Special Interest Group for Contributor Experience. And I also lead a sub-project in open source Kubernetes, and I'm a CNCF ambassador as well. So I do a lot of things in the open source Kubernetes and cloud native communities, and hopefully bring benefit to my business as well. We'll talk more about that.
Cool. Jorge?
Yeah, and I'm Jorge Castro. So I'm a former Kubernetes contributor. I actually had Kaslin's job as contributor experience, but now I'm emeritus, which is the long walk, and also an emeritus CNCF ambassador. So I've worked with Kubernetes, Kubeflow, Cloud Custodian, and a bunch of other projects that are in the CNCF. And these days I work for the CNCF on the projects team. So now I get to support all 220, whatever the actual number is today, because it changes all the time. So I get to be at the intersection of everybody, which is very interesting to me. So I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being guest. And for those of you who doesn't know, Jorge is the essential power of having the project boot pavilion, power and influence, I don't know, around the project pavilion area at KubeCon. So whatever happens there is thanks to Jorge. So thank you for driving this. For the last few KubeCons, it's phenomenal. So
yeah, the projects are very excited. A lot of this is the events team. So we try to have a space at KubeCon that's just for projects, because you get that special. There's a special magic when you just get contributors into a space and leave them alone, you know?
yeah, I can say that firsthand, because I'm also a CNCF ambassador, but also I'm contributing to a few other projects like Project Harbor and recently K3S. I'm taking care of the community around that. Having that area at KubeCon is so good that you can connect to the people that are interested in the project, not the products. So that businessy vibe is not there, which changes the conversations so differently. So
yeah, we should talk about that.
Yes. I'm slightly moving towards our primary agenda for today. So all right, so we have something like agenda, but it's a guideline. So I'm gonna go like, what do you folks understand by our roles? What is the developer advocacy for you, a formal definition and your own definition? Can you share that?
Developer advocacy is many things to many people.
Good start.
Yeah. I think a particularly important thing to know about the role for anyone considering it or trying to understand what it is that it is implemented in different ways in different companies, which is pretty common for a lot of different roles in tech. For developer relations, the primary difference that I see across companies is whether it's implemented as part of engineering or as part of marketing. because the idea of developer relations or developer advocacy, in all of the organizations that I've been in, it's been in engineering. And the goal is to have actual engineers, technical folks who are hands-on with the technology, who are embedded in these technical communities, know what they want and need, and can help them get that, and also bring that feedback back into the business. That's kind of the two main parts of developer advocacy, is going out into the developer communities and trying to help them out, hopefully with the products of your company, I guess. But also other things, trying to have a good reputation within the community so that you can get feedback from them and learn from them and then bring that feedback back into the company. And yeah, so that's kind of the core of it. George, what do you want to add on?
Yeah, I also kind of grew up in the engineering side of, I guess back in the days, we used to call it community management. When I got into the industry, it was like I was a community manager. But it's a lot of the same roles. And I think especially in open source, those were the early days. But now once cloud came and everyone started to figure things out, it's kind of evolved into what we call this today. I would say that the biggest impact I've seen from people that are really good at this is how they bring value to the entire team that they're assigned to. So it's not just a community manager doing community things or developer relations being the one engaging, but like the entire team's output increases that way. So it's not just the one person representing the project, but it becomes obvious that the entire team has engaged with the community better or has taken an effort as a team to, I don't know, let's say improve the contributor guide or something like that.
I also think it's important to call out that developer relations, usually the kinds of tasks and actual work that we do, there's a lot of overlap with other kinds of role within the company. And the benefit of the role is that overlap, I think. That you have engineers who are talking with marketing and helping them out with campaigns. And we're also talking with the product teams and providing early feedback on new features and doing friction logging and filing bugs and actually working with the engineering team to fix bugs sometimes. And like you mentioned, community management. Sometimes we work directly with customers and help with user studies with usability researchers. So there's a lot of overlap with a lot of different kinds of roles. And in that overlap, we bring those roles closer together.
So it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife kind of thing. From my point of view, we have to know stuff all around, like from technology to social media to video editing, sound quality. And by technology, I don't mean only the editing part of the advocacy stuff, but like if we take the cloud native ecosystem, we should know a bunch of Kubernetes and all the projects and then how to work with them. And actually, my take is we bridge the gap between technology and people. So we're kind of educators also. So it's for the broader audience. George, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, that's why I hate this word, set of words. Developer relations, developer advocate.
That's later into agenda, George. You're rushing through the
agenda. Yeah.
Why you hate our job?
Well,
George?
We could talk about the word later, but I want to focus on the good things that both of you just said first. You kind of have to know all aspects of the business, like in order to be truly effective. And I think it's interesting. Sometimes these roles, that person might work for the office of the CTO, for example, to get that cross. Is that where you work?
I'm in the office of the CTO. Yeah.
Right. So that's one example. And then when I was at VMware, I was embedded with the Tanzu team as a community manager for Kubernetes. I still interfaced with a centralized open source program office at the higher level. That wasn't really in like my reporting chain at all. Like, but they were just a resource and kind of a stakeholder there, but in a really great way, right? That way I could rev with the business unit as fast as I needed to go. But then you have that centralized resource across an organization, which is also very good. And then I've seen setups where everyone is kind of centralized in like an OSPO, and they might be lent out to teams, but the reporting structure is through the OSPO and not the team. So there's probably books that could be written about the different styles, way to do it. But I think what's important here is what annoys me is how the role, the names, and what everybody thinks our results should be have been changing over the past 20 years. And I've been doing the same. I've just been doing the same thing I've always done. I think the difference now, especially in now that cloud native is mature, is the importance of our metrics above all else. Like I still do the same things, but now I measure it differently, as opposed to before I thought it was just open source magic.
Yeah.
So it kind of
certainly feeling the pressure on metrics.
Yeah. Oh, I know you want to talk about metrics. So.
Me? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you love the ROI.
Oh, yes. I do love metrics. I run the comms team in open source Kubernetes, and we own the social media accounts for the open source Kubernetes project. So I recently put together a little presentation. I'll have to grab you that link later so that you can maybe put in the video description or something. But there's a recording of me presenting the stats about our different community engagement platforms in a community meeting. And so we own Blue Sky, X, LinkedIn, and Mastodon are the different platforms that we have social media presences on. And they're very different. They're all very different. And they have different audiences as well. Like on X, we have 2 different accounts. We have one for contributors and one for anyone, general public, end users, contributors, whoever wants to listen to it. And that account is, of course, much, much bigger. Kubernetes is such a large project, second largest open source project in the world, they say. So that account is like over 300,000 followers. And then the contributor account is only like 15,000.
Only 15.
Only. And what we've noticed from those is that folks, it's more about the content than it is about how you write it. Folks want to know about things that are technically interesting and that affect them in their jobs. This is not rocket science. But like posts about releases and what's new in releases, those get a lot of attention. Posts about really important CVEs or security vulnerabilities get a lot of attention. So it's really more about what you're posting about than how you write it, in the case of Kubernetes accounts, at least. But I love diving into the data and seeing what we can learn and seeing how we can better communicate with the audiences that Kubernetes needs to communicate with. Because as an open source project, it's really important, of course, for users to understand what's going on. One thing, a complaint that we often get in open source Kubernetes is that it's hard for users to know what's going on because folks are using it through different vendors and different platforms. And so having a centralized place to hear about what's going on from open source Kubernetes is kind of difficult to connect people with, because it's not like we can push notifications to wherever they're actually running Kubernetes, because we have no say in that.
Right.
They've got to come to us.
Yeah.
So that's one of the tricky things about DevRel, is it can be difficult to get the right kinds of metrics to understand how to better improve the things that we're doing.
We're talking a lot about open source, and as you, George, said, developer advocacy and the whole thing was kind of tightly related to open source. Do you think that's still the case, or our role kind of transcended into the product areas? And I want to go from there later on about to discuss the return of investment, or ROIs, that George really wants to discuss. So do you think that our job is still primarily for open source and that's the use case, or there can be usage outside of the open source?
Okay, I'm going to get spicy. So in the early days, even into my Kubernetes day, it was always your job was to be like the true north, right? It's like you are supposed to be the open source champion in that company, right? Like, but also I think especially as I've gotten older and more experienced and hung out with like product people and salespeople and successful co-founders, you find out really quickly that that person should also be keen on the business and on the products, because even though you're having open source relationships, back then they were very much open source relationships. These days, as things have been professionalized, like at a KubeCon, you always have that open source relationship, but you also always have the commercial relationship. You're just wearing different hats. There might be some people that usually if someone is in between jobs or something and they go to KubeCon, you're almost always talking to them in the open source hat, right? When someone is brand new at a job, you might be asking a lot of questions about their business part, right? And not as much as the open source, because you've already had that relationship for a while. So I think the ratio in between the individuals changes, and also there's a group dynamic there as well, right? Especially with our crowd when we hang out. So there is kind of that ratio that you have. I think these days especially, it's more important than ever for us to recognize that the open source and the product stuff, we used to keep them separate like oil and water, because I would always be deathly afraid, right? It's like I'm having a community interaction and a sales person is going to show up and it's going to be awkward, right? Or the other way around, right? I'm sure the salespeople are like, do not bring George's hippie stuff around customers, right? Whereas these days I see our role as like, you're the savvy one now. You're the one that both teams depend on to be that bridge, right? So when I have my commercial hat on, I am also bringing those open source benefits to that product discussion, because I feel that's the role now, is how does the open source stuff make the product better, right? And then on the other side, in the open source side, instead of it being the awkward thing, it's going to be like my company pays me to participate in this open source project, and we're going to have a fantastic relationship, and we're going to do all of the open source things with the open source values and all of that good stuff. But in the back of my mind, let's say I'm doing this in Kubernetes and Kaslin is my coworker, right? I know that she has a boss and she will have goals tied to her success in this project. And so will I. So as savvy developer relations, we all look at it and we say, okay, how can we get something we talk about in the CNCF all the time? How can we get the most amount of people, the most amount of wins as efficiently as possible? Like if you are participating in that open source project, now that we measure everything, it removes a lot of that anxiety, I guess, from discussing, right? If you're talking amongst peers and we all know who's contributed what, and everyone goes in it with our Kubernetes values and our best intentions, then I feel that's one of the reasons why cloud native had kind of expanded out past the early days, was the recognition of the commercial entities, right? And now the challenge I see for the next decade of the CNCF is the end users is that last piece that I want to see, now that the producers and the projects themselves, if they can get that vibe going, that's the kind of efficiency that attracts end users. And you can see it in the products, right? In the open source products. And so that was a very long-winded thing.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a lot to unpack.
It is. I think about this a lot. I think our field, this has been an era of transformation and challenge for all of us, right? And I feel like I know I'm not the only one putting as much thought of it as we are.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah. Kaslin, do you have a take on this one, or
I think it's something that a lot of folks don't realize about developer relations. I feel like it kind of happens naturally in organizations. You've probably been in an organization on an engineering team where there's that one person on the engineering team who just like does a lot of stuff on social media and is always talking to people outside of the company or something like that. That's how a lot of folks end up in developer relations, is they're just the person on the engineering team, or who's just really good at giving presentations, really good at explaining to stakeholder teams what technology your team is actually working on. So those are the folks that end up in developer relations. And I think that's how the role started, was there were just a bunch of those engineers around, and the stakeholder teams kept asking for more and more of their time. And so they couldn't do as much of the engineering work as they needed to do anymore. And so they ended up kind of making a role for it, so that folks could do those really important tasks that were needed, that they just happened to kind of naturally lean into as an actual job function. And I think George, talking about something I like to talk to folks about is the business value of open source. Because in reality, as much as we want to imagine that open source exists and purely out of the goodness of everyone's hearts, it exists as a function of business. And there's a lot of different ways that businesses view open source and try to make use of open source, depending on what role they play in the ecosystem. Some businesses are trying to make use of open source as a form of marketing, like, try out our product. It's open source. You can check out how it's implemented, check out the security profile of it. Like, all of the information, the technical information you need to know about the product is available because it's available through open source. And then we provide extra features on top in order to create greater value for our users who want to make use of this technology. That's one form of open source as a business that I think is really interesting, and there are lots of others. So I love talking with folks who run businesses in the open source space about how that relationship works. And in terms of the open source communities themselves, something I always tell new contributors is I'm constantly surprised by how similar to a business Kubernetes is. Because Kubernetes itself is such a large open source project, it's very structured. We have the steering committee at the top, and the steering committee breaks up, well, and then the project is broken up into special interest groups based on different areas of architecture that we have to think about with the project. Like, there's SIG node, which focuses on the actual nodes where workloads run in a Kubernetes cluster, versus contributor experience, where we focus on making sure that we have what we need in GitHub for contributors to do the work that they need to do day to day. We have SIG docs, creating all of the docs. So there's so much work to do that, just like in a business, it's split up into different teams. And then those teams are split up into sub-teams. And it kind of mirrors an organizational structure. We also spend a lot on doing testing and running the code that we need to run, because we need computers in order to develop Kubernetes. And so a lot of that comes from funding that we get through the CNCF, through businesses sponsoring the CNCF, or through businesses contributing their people to work on open source. So it is intertwined, and understanding how it's intertwined will allow you to get the most out of it.
All right. Good stuff. By the way, there was in the beginning of the year, there's FOSDEM, which is the biggest open source European conference in Belgium, and the community track I was there the whole time, but like half of the talks were about open source business. So if you're interested, it was phenomenal talks out there about people actually elaborating, and there were a lot of touch points around community, people, and DevRel, how they help out the open source business to be actually working, because it's a tricky business, right? To run open source and earn money from it. It's not an easy thing. But let's go back to our roles. I really want to know what each one of you is doing on daily basis. Can you share that, if it's not really a secret? Kaslin, do you want to go first? I think people will be interested to know if someone is listening and want to jump into our role, what they can expect. And as we said, depends on organization, depends on the setup. So I think if each of us share what we do, I think that will be like because Kaslin, you're working for Google, huge organization. George is running for the foundation. I'm running for a little little software company called SUSE.
Right
So
in the middle.
different perspectives of how our job is set up. So I'm looking forward to that. Kathleen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier the overlap that developer relations has. I also think a lot of the things we've been talking about here are very related to leadership. We talked about DevRel sometimes being in the office of the CTO and having this broad scope. I think that's a really important part of it. But in terms of what I do day to day, especially as a manager, right now I'm doing a lot of planning conversations and stakeholder management and trying to understand what stakeholders need out of our team and how we can best address those needs. And we have such a wide toolbox in developer relations. So say we're working with a product that really wants to, not every product wants to gain new users. There's kind of two perspectives on like users for the products. Sometimes it's about gaining new users, but sometimes it's just about helping the users that they have use the product better. So like understanding what side of that spectrum the product is on and what specific launches and features are coming out or that they're thinking about that we could help with. So we kind of make a plan together, and some of the things in our toolbox that we can do to help them with their goals are friction logging. Like I mentioned, we can test out these new features ourselves since we are engineers who have a really strong view of what's going on in the communities and what folks need from those products. We can serve as kind of an early tester of things and give them early feedback. We also, I had a meeting with marketing last week. We do help out with marketing, especially with things like KubeCon. Like Google's presence at KubeCon, we work very closely with marketing on how should the booth look? How do we make it appeal to technical folks who are attending KubeCon? How do we make sure that it has information that they actually want to know about? So we're not just pushing whatever the hot new things for the company are. We'll have some of that, but we want to make sure that it's tailored to the audience that we're trying to reach. So talking with them about campaigns that they have coming up, what events they want to support, what things are resonating well with the communities that we see folks liking. So we've talked a bit about that lately. We also do a lot of content creation, especially in a world of AI. The world of content creation is very interesting right now. I have some folks on my team who are really awesome at making tutorials, which is really important for folks trying to learn how to use new technologies or new features. So writing tutorials, contributing to the documentation in Google Cloud when we talk to community members and they're like, hey, this thing kind of sucked. Can you help make it smoother? Like we'll go in and contribute to the documentation directly or work with the engineers if it's a feature that needs to change. Yeah, so that's kind of a little selection of things like friction logging, helping with presence with communities through marketing, helping with documentation and tutorials so that engineers can actually learn the things they need to know about what we're building.
Cool stuff.
Not to mention the open source work.
Can I go last?
Actually running meetings.
Orlin, can I go after you?
After me?
Yeah, because my job will be the weirdest. Okay. All right.
Okay. As Kaslin said, I'm under the office of the CDO, which was new stuff. I was when I joined SUSE, we were under marketing. So the things drastically changed when we moved under the office of the CTO, if I can say that. So all the social stuff kind of were reduced because when I first joined, part of our job was to drive social campaigns and stuff around projects. Specific for my role and my team, my teammates Robert Cichia and David Mohan. So we're focused on the community side of the thing. So we're focused primarily on the 100%, not primarily, 100% on the project. So we don't do products. As we chatted before that, like we don't mix that in our role. We are pure community, as you said, George. So as part of my job, I do still community work for projects, for example, K3S and Harbor. So I try to communicate and be the glue between the different teams that are contributing to the projects, between the project and the KubeCon and so on and so forth. We do training materials, for example, Rancher Academy. We do courses there. What else? We try to feedback some requirements from community, sometimes to feed it back to products. I think, Kaslin, you mentioned that that feedback loop is super important, because people think that only the products and the companies are sponsored by people or by money, the open source projects, but open source projects are also sponsored by enterprise requirements from the business. So it's I think it's a sometimes underestimated input to the open source projects. So yeah, that's very brief what I do, and I do these wonderful shows with folks like you. So it's a very community. It's less producty, but it's very community and project. So I try to actually, when I joined, my role was called evangelist, and it was very funny because evangelist in my part of the world means totally different thing that for many others, and my friends were making jokes with me at the time, but now it's technology advocate. So I go to conferences and speak and deliver talks, and I'm doing some podcasts with some other folks and shooting videos for the different projects. So it's all about awareness of the projects that we work on, and how to bring the community closer to the project, so we can get more contributors and more adopters, and the adopters to feel more welcome to share their feedback, and not to be scared of saying, hey, that sucks, can you fix that? Or can I do that? Is it like, I don't know, it sounds super complicated, can you show me how? So I also guide people to get into the project, and actually I'm like a selling, I don't know, easy drugs of, hey, that's a good first issue, do you want to take it out? And I'm trying to recruit for the projects in a way. So yeah, that's it. It's not that, but that's the essential of what I do.
I think we should call out that no matter what in this job, there's no avoiding the podcasts and the having to give talks. Like you always have to.
Yeah, it's super fun. When people ask, hey, what you do? And I was like, I'm going to conferences. If you ask my wife, I'm going to conference to have beers with friends, which is part of the job, I suppose. But yeah, it's funny. We deliver talks and we are paid for that. It's interesting. Yeah.
I think a lot of folks have opinions about that, which is very reasonable. But something I like to point out is that, you know, who else goes to a lot of places and schmoozes here and things? It's kind of the marketing hat within DevRel showing its face there when you're going to kind of the social events at conferences and things, trying to hang out with the community where they are.
Yeah, but it's a non-stop conversation since day one of conference until the end. You're just talking work in some way or another, regardless if you're having a drink or not. So yeah.
Yep.
I work 20-hour days at KubeCon. Everything. You can't even have breakfast by yourself without work.
No. That's it.
Yeah, there was one where I was writing trip reports until 2 a.m. and then I had to get up at 7 a.m. to be at the conference.
I try to make it. Those are hard. But it's also interesting because I'd always say I came from the engineering kind of developer relations at the house. You for sure want to have a relationship with the marketing person, your marketing counterpart, because that's just a free win-making machine for both of you, right? Like if they know how to, I don't like running social media accounts. I'm not good at it, right? But I love to provide content for someone who really knows how to do that and reminds you, hey, it's been 3 days. We got to get something out, say something.
I would love to be able to talk to other engineers in my technical space and for them to be like, oh yeah, that social media account was actually super useful.
Yeah.
And so we can contribute to that.
Yeah. By the way, that's part of our job sometimes to convince engineers actually to contribute not only code, but actually to be active in the community in a way like delivering talks, or I don't know, to convince them to submit, for example, or to review their talk. Yeah, it's
share what you know.
Yeah.
Even though you love to be deep in the code and working on the functionality all day, other people want to know about what you're working on. I can help you do that.
And share it from the kitchen right away. Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to nurture that in engineers as much as possible, because I think I was very spoiled in the early days of Kubernetes, because like the initial steering committee, they were all engineers, but they understood product. They understood this job, I think, better than, the person who was tasked to execute it. So sometimes when you get engineers who invest in the community as part of their professional stuff is really awesome to me. I think I love it.
What it's all about.
So George, what you do?
So what do I do? So I have a unique position where all of the member companies in the CNCF kind of pool their resources, and then that supports staff. So our team is the projects team. So we support all the CNCF projects, and my job specifically is around the projects themselves, whereas Jeff kind of he's all over the place. Bob is our ROI guy, and then we have like a manager, but it would take me all day to explain that. But generally speaking, I still find myself doing a lot of event management. A lot. How are you going to pull off the KubeCon? How are people going to get the value that they see out of paying for that ticket, right? Because that is what funds my job. So I have 3 stakeholders that I think about with this job. The first is the projects themselves. So are they getting the right information to get the booth? Are they taking advantage of all the resources that they get? For example, Oracle donated millions of dollars of cloud credits, right? Are we optimizing for those, right? And is Oracle seeing the value of having that support, right? But are the projects taking advantage of it as well? So multiply that times every organization that wants to donate something to the CNCF. So by virtue, I have to be multi-cloud. I have to understand everything, and it becomes complicated because we end up being very shallow, but not very deep. So I know just enough about all of you to be dangerous. So my job is to make sure that the projects are healthy. So that's everything from the project pavilion. Sometimes I'll join project meetings if they ask for help. So Kubeflow wanted some help with their graduation processes or whatever. So I've spent some time there. I've spent some time with Helm, and projects can basically ask around for staff resources and things like that. So there's that aspect. The second part is, let's see, the end users. So this I just got recently assigned. I have a triangle where I write this down right there, so I remember it. Is the end users themselves. So one of the great things I love about Cloud Native is how sophisticated the end users are. Adobe is like our primary example. So they just recently published their reference architecture, which they basically say, here's how we set up our Kubernetes. Here's all the projects we use. Here's all the challenges we face. And they could submit that to a GitHub repo, and then we post it on the CNCF website. So the idea there is to get all the end users as well. It's not just us, the ones making it, the open source contributors and stuff, but having the end users be a part of that feedback loop is very important to our team, because we're very much an ecosystem focused team, right? The end user, the contributor, and the people, that ratio has to match. There's a certain golden path where everybody is happy. But if the equation is out of balance, sometimes that leads to friction. So for us, it's kind of about showing that value so that these end users want to participate when they realize that open source isn't just for consuming, it's for contributing. And then us, the third guy there being Bob, are we showing them that they are saving the money, right? Like show them the numbers that prove it, and that helps keep the ecosystem healthy. So I also talk a lot to individual contributors. I don't want to say I'm the therapist, but usually there's a lot of projects that have people like us, and they're like, hey, we haven't synced in 6 months. What are the cool new tools other projects are using? Like, are we on the right path with this? I'm struggling with issues. Is there any projects that have had a PR backlog. How do I do a PR party? Those kind of things. But we also get individuals as well who are like, hey, I'm an ambassador. Like, I have a call today. I need help with my resume. So we are almost kind of a pool of resources that are available. So I don't know what I do every single day when I wake up. It totally depends on who needs what. The thing to avoid is, are you going from fire to fire to fire to fire, which we have done in the past, or are you still strategically moving forward? So right now we're working on a new contributor site for the CNCF, which should tie in everything we've learned, everything together. So that's what our team strategically is focused on, so we can respond to the projects. And they file tickets for us. It's exactly what you think it would be. But are we also improving the long-term resources that they depend on, so that we're not filing tickets all day? So that's what our team is working on right now. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really bad. So I love this job. What's really weird about this job? I haven't gone to a KubeCon as a normal person in like 5 years. I have
don't
no
do that
idea.
anymore.
Because you all are going to the keynotes, and I'm in the project pavilion doing setup, so I never see the keynote. I watch the keynotes on the way home. Like,
you're not attending.
I'm not attending. It's very strange, but it gives us unique perspectives. So I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. People are like, hey, how is KubeCon app? I really don't know. I was in the floor. I mean, it was fun. I spoke with 1,000 people, but I don't know any talk. Have you attended talk in the last few KubeCons? No, right?
I usually try to hit at least one personally.
Yeah.
Like the most important one for you, like if you want to see someone, right, or support someone. But a part of that,
yeah.
And I always try to make the keynotes, because I like to share what's going on in the keynotes on social media, so that folks can keep up with what's going on, because usually the biggest announcements and things will be there. So I think that's always really important to hit for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Are we going to touch base again why you hate the word, George, or we pass that one?
I mean, so to bring it all back together is so I am starting to see more of the, it's hard to say customers demand, right? Because but I am starting to see more, how do I say this? Our organizations want to see more return on investment on what they do, right? Like it is becoming apparent that all parts of the businesses are always under constant scrutiny, no matter what, right? So
and when George is spending his day giving resume feedback and doing whatever things come up, it's hard to show that.
Yeah.
Even if those things are really important.
It is, but it's also really great that the CNCF exists for things like that, because it's kind of anytime an ambassador has put in work, whether they've done a presentation at somewhere, if 2 years later a staffer needs to help them out with an hour's worth of advice, that's an investment the Linux Foundation will always make. So, it's just a job I kind of take seriously. Like usually, especially there's been a rough patch with people and jobs and things like that. And so sometimes it feels like you got to be there to support each other and things like that. And that's when the personal and the kind of community relationships really come into play, because there are challenges, but there are also opportunities for folks out there. So people will be experiencing different parts of their careers. Some will be in the very beginning. I'm hoping to finish this off soon. So you're kind of trying to also deal with that. But to get back on point before I get all emotional is I think us now more than ever, because we are the ones that know every little aspect of the business. I feel that we should be leading the charge on the metrics in a way that's like, I want to make it front and center. That's one of the reasons at the CNCF, we really push for projects to onboard onto LFX, which gives us charts and metrics, and they're consistent across everybody. And it even tells you things like how many contributors in a project are working outside of their core hours, right? In a time where we're under economic pressure, but also work-life balance, right? And there's a scientific number there. There's a ratio of a chart that's when it looks like this, it's healthy. When it looks like this, it is not healthy, right? And then we can use that kind of data to do that. So what I have been really thinking a lot about is, as we add tools like LFX or whatever thing everyone's building to measure everything, is, are we able to be the ones that can take that data and then actually pitch might be the right word, right? Is pitch the business people to be like, hey, we are number blah in contributing to open source. This has led to this, which would have cost us a lot more money, right? Like, and we've said these kinds of things out loud for a while now, but now, especially because if you actually believe in the open source stuff, you know that there's savings there, and you know there's the value, like you feel it in your heart, right? And then now it took this long for us to figure out the actual science to prove it. So that's what I want to see at KubeCon. I want to see LFX charts everywhere. I want to see when you go to projects and it says contributor health and it gives you that nice big green thumbs up that they put on that. I want to see that, and I want to see when an end user looks at a project and says, oh no, this is going yellow. Hey, wait a minute. That's an area we're investing in already. Is this a place where we can contribute? Perhaps. And if they're thinking of that, who's going to be the folks that shows them how to do it, right? Because they are organizations. I can't just show up and be like, let me do this for you, right? We have to teach them how to fish. It's sometimes it just gets so complicated. You can't just give people like you have to teach them how to fish at some point. So I don't know what to call this anymore. Right. So I'm kind of just going with developer relations, but I feel like there is almost a open source business analyst, but I don't want to be, no, that sounds even worse. Like,
that's worse. No.
Yeah, exactly. No. Clearly worse, right? Because we also want to remain the cool hoodie people who like hang out with the engineers, right? So to me, I feel like this field is still going through a transformation. And I think we have a ways to go as a group. I know a lot of us are now thinking about these metrics. But when I listen to conference talks and things like that, there's a part of me that's like, oh, you should have led with the business value first on that one, and so I'm trying to kind of help people realize, because I'm kind of privileged. I get to see everybody. So I can kind of be like, hey, let's talk about numbers. So the best way we can do that is by making those charts and showing you. So that's kind of what we're concentrating on. So I'd like to see it evolve into a little bit more of a scientific endeavor, I guess. I don't know. What do you all think? I know that's a spicy take.
I think it's all about balance. Like you mentioned, a lot of our job is about the people. It's about connecting the people and the technology. And so over-indexing either direction causes problems.
Yeah.
So you've got to find the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And you, Kaslin, as a manager, how you measure? Is it easy to measure the return of investments of the dev advocacy role?
Oh,
no,
man.
never.
We probably should have started with that, huh? Is this even?
Oh boy.
Actually, Kaslin, is this even possible to the dreamer extent that Jorge Castro thinks?
I find it very interesting that you mentioned the metrics on project health, because I think for the CNCF that is a very important metric, that if you can show that in a really clear, visible way, there are really important impacts that you can have, like showing the companies that are using these open source projects what kind of risk they're actually taking. Because when you as a business take on an open source project that you want to use to build on top of, you're taking on a risk, and you don't always understand just what kind of risk that is, and making that clearer is really important. Of course, I work at Google, where we build the products on top of open source, and so that is one metric that we care about, is how healthy is especially in the case of GKE, where we're offering a managed Kubernetes service to our users. It's very tied into open source Kubernetes and the health of the project, which is why we make huge investments into dedicating engineers to running Kubernetes and into the infrastructure, and all kinds of investments we make into making sure that the open source community is healthy. And we just kind of try to figure that out. So metrics on that sounds great, actually.
Mhm.
And as far as my team, like, we create a lot of tutorials, like I mentioned. We create a lot of content resources to try to understand, to try to help users understand how to do things better. And you can never quite get the metric that you really want with that kind of work. Because what we really want to know is, were we able to solve the problem for you? Were you able to make progress in a way that was meaningful to you thanks to what we did? And that's not a number.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to do it at scale. Maybe you can find a story or two, but it's hard to tell. You need some stories, but you also need numbers in order to tell the story of the business impact. So the current demands for impact in the current economy are pushing us towards different kinds of tasks that we can more easily track, and the types of tracking that we can do also influence what we choose to do. So one thing our organization is focused on a lot right now, I would say, is in-person events. Especially now that folks have kind of moved on from the pandemic. In-person events are returning in the US, in Europe, and other places around the globe. They've been back for a long time, but especially in the Americas, I think the in-person community building kind of opportunities are only just starting to really return. And so actually being in person with folks and seeing them get hands on keyboard is a way that we can both get those stories and get some numbers at the same time.
Yeah.
So helping folks get hands on and really learn the technology in person is something that we're investing more into, because we get great metrics from it. Another thing is our product feedback. We've implemented new programs to make sure that we are providing feedback on the most important areas for the product, and that we're tracking what kinds of bugs we're filing. We don't want to just be filing little minor annoyance kind of bugs. We want to be filing bugs that really make a difference for people using the products. So we're doing more to track what kinds of bugs are we filing? Are they actually getting done? What did we do with the engineering team to make sure that that kind of stuff is happening? So that's a couple of ways that metrics are impacting how we do our work.
Metrics at events is a struggle for us, because after KubeCons, we send all of the maintainers a survey, and it's one of the only ways we can get feedback. And we're one of them, right? Like, how many surveys do you fill out after a conference? Not that many, So it's difficult too, especially when you're trying to fix something that people hate. And I need you to fill out the survey and tell me that, so I can tell my boss, so I can measure it.
And surveys are the obvious way to do that. But a less obvious way that I have implemented is the podcast. I'm a co-host of the Kubernetes podcast from Google. And when we're on site at something like KubeCon, I know that my bosses are going to be asking, what did folks actually get out of that event? What was the value for attendees? And the best way I found to do that is to ask. You could do that through a form, but there's all sorts of things you have to consider. I did a internship once with a psychology assistant professor, and we talked about the psychology of writing good survey questions.
Oh, no.
It's very difficult to write survey questions that actually get what you want out of people. But if you're having a one-on-one conversation with them and recording it in a podcast, then you have a recording later for what were the really important things when asked on the spot? What do people actually come up with? And I think it's a really good way to judge the value that folks actually got out of an event. Plus, they get something out of it because they're on a public podcast that gets a lot
their
of
logo gets the win
downloads.
as well. Hey, wins for everybody.
So if you're at KubeCon, please come find me.
Yeah. Jock Reed is having a good tip. Bribe them with swag. It's swag is always a trait. So yeah.
I was reading a book recently because I'm the kind of nerd that reads business books. And I was reading about OKRs because I'm trying to learn how to be a manager. Okay.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for your people.
Yeah.
So,
It was talking about how you might have an OKR for your business that's like, get this many new users. But one way you could get that many new users is to give your product away for free.
Yeah.
So you've got to have like a counterbalance metric of, we want to get this many new users and
we want to sell it for money.
Yeah, make this much revenue or something like that. Something that counterbalances.
Right. And I think that that's the modern thing, right? I think in the early days it was like, get the users up. My first community job was Ubuntu. Get everyone using Linux, right? And these days it's more, find the balance so you can sell the product, but also provide enough value as an open source project to get community contributions in a way that you can still sell it and feel good about it, but foster their growth as well. Like the currency is also for the contributor, not just the commercial company, right? I gave Ubuntu 2 free years of work before I got a job, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, right? So like those of you that are just getting in the field, learn how to take advantage of these commercial companies by providing them value as a career highlight, and learn the stuff. I learned so much every day, I guess that's,
I really think there's something to that spectrum between, or pendulum or whatever it is, between does the product want new users right now, or are they trying to encourage usage? Because the tools that you use to get those can vary.
Right. And for us, that's a flag to look out for, right? I'm going to keep an eye on this project. I'm going to see where they're going with this, because sometimes you do find that new tool and you're like, the economic business value isn't making sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I need to know that before I commit to this tool any further. So,
talking about tooling, we have to talk about AI, unfortunately. Now, joke aside, do you think AI will replace some of our part of our job, or is going to complement it, is going to improve it, is going to make it easy, is going to make it suck, is going to make it boring? What's your...
So a quick thought on AI. Google's positioning, I think, has been interesting on this. I think Google has very much taken the stance that AI is a tool for folks to use, and it works best in the hands of someone who kind of knows the area well already. You know what you want to get out of it. The AI can assist you with coming up with new ideas, or in specific tasks like writing blog posts. I was reading a book recently that we don't have a thing for, actually, but I think it's called Writing for Developers. Blog posts that get read, writing blog posts that get read, something like that. It's from Manning. Highly recommend it. And they talk about using AI not to write the blog posts. I think it's so weird that people have gotten so fixated on like having the AI write the thing for me. I don't want the AI to write the thing for me. I want to be a better writer.
Yeah.
And the AI can help me with that by if I ask it the right kinds of questions.
Right.
It can help me think about the right kinds of considerations to make my writing better. It's kind of like the rubber ducky thing that we talk about in engineering a lot. If you just talk it out with a rubber ducky, you work through your thoughts and you get to the things that are really important there. So I think that's the kind of role that I see AI being most useful in, is you know what you want. So using the AI to help move your thought process along. and to get it done in the right way. I think AI as an assistant and as a tool is more interesting and more valuable than AI as the thing that
By
writes the blog
itself.
post.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah. So what I do is I love using it to help me. So for example, you have a KubeCon talk. What has your SIG done in the 6 months, right? But you have the AI bots took all the notes for all of your meetings. So I could take all that and say, come up with an outline of what we've been doing for the past 6 months. Make it generic.
Summarizing is great.
Yeah. And then it gives me an outline. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I lived through those things. Now let me fill in the stuff that I want. And it, I kind of use it as an organizational tool. I think that people like us especially should be very keen on these tools because, again, they're going to ask us what we think, right? And we are the ones that are kind of supposed to be the experts on this. And for a long time, he was like, I don't know. All I know is I read the blog posts, and this looks like a nightmare to me. Like it's just going to be the bots mailing the bots. But as I've been learning in it, especially with AI, you tend to forget how huge already the open source AI community is. Like it is massive. There is no open source without AI. Like I find so many cool new tools. You're getting people who've never been in open source before, but are coming into open source from AI. But then you have people who've always believed, learning the AI tools. And sometimes those things don't match, right? Which I think is very interesting, especially around. We're talking about this a lot at the CNCF. So we're announcing an AI conformance program in Atlanta, and everyone will be there and it'll be a party. So I think we're going to end up being the ones explaining the value of having a common set of APIs that these end users can depend on. It's take as much care as we do with the Kubernetes APIs, but then bundles it all for them and helps get rid of confusion, because that's why people want open source and standards in the first place. Is I want competitors. I want to be able to buy from everybody, but I want the API to be the same. So I always have that choice, right? So I do think that AI is a thing that we have to embrace and take care of. And then the other side is the automation side of things that you can do with AI are very powerful. And in our kind of what they used to call soft skills, it's a lot easier to get a lot of things done. And people always ask, like, where do I find out when this SIG meets or whatever? Like I've automated all of that stuff. So like at some point, it's just a matter of duct taping it together.
Yeah, and my take on this one actually kind of overlaps a lot of with what Kafka wrote. AI cannot replace writing. Right. Yeah. A lot of I see.
Or any kind of creative thing, like the creativity part of it can help with, but
which is super controversial because a lot of people are using AI exactly for this one, to replace the creativity part, not the boring, repeats of things like summarizing endless meetings and whatever.
Fix my email.
Yeah, people are like, give me ideas of something, or can you draft me whatever. That's you. That should be you. You can ask for, and so if you rely on AI to do that for you, maybe AI will replace you. But if you use AI to enhance your overall thoughts and then structure them in a way that are making more sense and to refine some of your stuff. For example, me as a non-native speaker, I use AI to fix my English quite often because I can use it, but I'm not the best. So why not to enhance it a little bit?
Yeah.
But that's it. Apart of that, and have you reviewed the CFPs recently of the?
Oh man, how many percentage was it this time? It was like 43%.
I don't know.
It was some absurd.
I don't know, but
I've done that job and I see people doing it now, and it is affecting our people's ability to contribute because it's
and you can catch it so easy because it's so dry, so I don't know, soulless. The whole thing, and it's a weird thing because people are kind of, in my opinion, misusing AI to write stuff on
Yeah.
their behalf instead of helping them out. I don't know.
It's inevitable, but I don't know when. If an AI submitted talk ever gets submitted to KubeCon, I don't know what I'm going to do with a person.
There have already been plenty.
Yeah, I know.
But by the way, have you read that article? I think it was published in Times. How AI affects our brain activity, our creativity centers. It's super worrying. If you read that article, it's super interesting. But that cognitive actions that are happening in our brain when you use AI, they did a study. People, and especially in the group where the study group was the students who were started studying before AI, and people and students after AI existed, totally different, like mechanics of the mind and how they create stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm old, I don't know, but it sounds worrying. Sounds like we're losing stuff.
Yeah, because we are also technical people. So I'm like, it's just math. I'm going to use it to my advantage. Where like I see normal people when they go and they use AI, they don't think like we do. Yeah.
Let the AI think. And something I want to point out here, though, before we completely move on from it, is all of the stuff about AI and creative writing and things like that. Same thing applies to code. Because if you want to achieve something with code, AI can probably write something that maybe works, but it's not going to take into consideration all of the architecture considerations. How do you actually want to solve the problem? Like, you'd have to go into extreme detail to really incorporate all of the considerations that need to go into writing a piece of code. And so it's a really useful assistant for figuring out pieces of a code base or getting a summary of what's going on in a new code base or understanding a language that you're not familiar with. I find it really useful with that and for learning. But
such a great memory jogger too, right? Like, when's the last time I used Bash? Oh yeah, that is right. Yeah, okay. You know,
and the most useful thing for me is like, I know that there's a way to do this that's clever, and like if I can describe it right with words, it can help me figure out what the actual code is to do it in that clever way that I know exists and I can't quite remember how to do right now. So
all right, and before we close up, I want to ask you, what was your inspiration when you joined this kind of role? And
I loved working with the community. I was a solutions architect at Oracle working on Kubernetes. And this was like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, I remember your first KubeCon. Yeah.
Yay. My first KubeCon was 2016 in Seattle, actually. But so I was starting to get involved with the community. I thought, especially when you're early in your career, I think the most useful thing is to be able to talk with other people in that space and learn from them. What's exciting to you? What are you actually doing in your day-to-day job? And those kinds of opportunities are a really important way to grow. So I wanted to get involved with the communities and give back to them somehow. And so that's how I ended up being the solutions architect on the team who's working on how do we help customers actually achieve the things that they want to achieve, solve the problems that they want to solve. I'm learning from both customers and communities about the kinds of problems that they want to solve and turning that into something that I can teach to others and help others learn from. So I've always been kind of in that space of I want everybody to learn and do technology together. I like people to like the things that I like.
Yeah. I just love tech, and I just grew up in the era. I'm old. I grew up with Linux, and the only way you can hang out with other technology nerds, you went to a Linux like install fest at a university or whatever. And that's what I did. I worked at a university and I love teaching stuff. I love learning stuff from people. I love teaching it. And then eventually, just being around when Linux took off, there's a whole bunch of us who are like, can trace back our lineage to these hobbyist groups that kind of helped start the movement. So I was fortunate to do that. And that it kind of evolved to like the professional capacity. So now the job for us is ensuring that next generation has those same exact opportunities. but I never want them to make the same mistakes we did. I want to make all new mistakes.
And they will sure have the tools to do it.
Oh yeah. Mistakes at scale. It's great.
Yeah. And for me, I shared the same thing as you, George. At university, I was the only one using Linux. So
Yeah.
I was the one, hey, that's going to be the next great thing. And it was people like, what are you talking about? 20 years later, maybe more, people like, hey, you were right. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
And professionally, I was introduced to that job by Jonas Roslund. I think you know him from.
Oh yeah, he was my boss for a while.
I know. So I was with VMware at the time, and I was looking for a new job, and he was like, I see you do stuff in the community. Do you want to join the community team? I was like, what the community team does? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I started researching what the community people do, what developer advocacy people do, and then my first inspiration was I'm not sure if you can recall Jason Morgan. He was a technology advocate back in the early days of Linkerd.
Okay.
And he was this kind of super energetic on screen crazy person with super interesting haircut. And he was like, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And it's gonna be super cool. And I was like, I want to do this. That looks super nice.
Yeah.
All right. We're 10 minutes after the hour, and I think
this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun, but I think already people are leaving because they have a job to do.
Yeah,
it's super late for me, but it's kind of midday for you both. So, any last words before we go?
Thanks for listening, and we're always here to help.
Come contribute to Kubernetes.
Yes.
Yes, see you at KubeCon in Atlanta, right?
Yep. See you at the Project Pavilion. If you want to sit down and talk about this stuff all day long, that's all we do at the Project Pavilion is talk.
Yeah, most of the cases is either George or some of our ambassador group shouting out, "Let's go on the tour!" So that's going to be us.
Teach you all the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, folks, for the time today. It was super nice. I hope it was useful for people. So see you next time in the community, people. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.